Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Buffalo Wings. We are at the start of the 2029 season, just played through opening day. Turned out to be a pretty good opening day for the Wings, a 5-0 shutout victory over Washington. Ohtani and a couple of relievers did a great job on the mound. Adley Rutschman went 2 for 3 with a couple of runs scored and a couple of ribbies in his first game for the Wings. Obviously, we'll have to see how he does over the next 7 seasons. The last year or two of that contract definitely could be troubling for us, and we're certainly in a more tenuous financial position after signing him than we were beforehand. But we are a win now team, and because of that, felt like it was the right decision to go all in on Rutschman to try to turn this team that won 101 games last year and made it to the NLCS in its third year of existence into a team that can hopefully take another step this year and get to a World Series and hopefully win that World Series. So, off to a really nice start on opening day, and we'll see how things go in the coming weeks in this episode. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet and you are watching this episode, would appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. Definitely appreciate all of our loyal viewers, all of the frequent commenters, and everyone who watches the episodes and doesn't comment or give us a thumbs up or interact. I still know there's more people who do that than not, and appreciate sincerely everyone who watches the Buffalo Wings and all of our previous excursions in OOTP on this channel. And we mentioned in our last couple episodes the little rash of pitching injuries that we had in spring training. A good piece of news: Harold Melenge just began his rehab assignment in AAA Albany. He's definitely a left-hander who could help our bullpen. Adrian Morejon looks like he's still about a month away. Another very established, strong left-hander out of the pen. And then Raylan Perez, we know, is going to miss most of the season, but hopefully we can get him back at some point with all of those guys being injured. We ended up keeping all 3 of the players we picked in the Rule 5 draft last year. Would think that those would be some of the people whose roster spots are a bit more tenuous. So it'll be interesting to see with Melenge over the next few weeks, and then Morejon after that, what type of decisions we have to make going forward with our pitching staff. And we are 2 weeks into the season. Things going very well for the Wings. We are tied with the Yankees at 10-4 for the best record in baseball. Only up half a game on the Expos. Obviously, it's pretty early in the season to have a big lead on anybody. Deshaun Seifu, not surprisingly, already leading the league with 12 steals as he's attempting to get to 100 for a second straight year. Adley Rutschman tied with Edwin Arroyo and Elly De La Cruz with a 1 WAR through the first couple weeks of the season. Yinger and Bieber are second and third, or actually tied for first and third in the National League. Yinger hasn't given up a run yet, or an earned run yet this season. And quite impressively, Shohei Ohtani, Shane Bieber, and Andrew Painter currently rank 1, 2, 3 in the league in pitcher WAR. So very early, very small sample size, but things obviously are going really well for the Wings here at the start of this season. You can see ERA is first in the league, and runs we are tied for 15th. But that's all of baseball, not just the National League. So best pitching staff in baseball so far, with a middle-of-the-pack offense at this point. And the record has improved to 16-4 at this point. Rutschman just missed making it onto base for the first time ever as a member of the Wings, and obviously he had a streak dating back to last season as well. but a 16-4 record with another week in the books, and obviously we went winless over our last 6 games. So as we get closer to the end of the month of April, can't ask for things to be going any better. I'll check in on Melenge in AAA, and he's 2-0 with 5 saves in 7 games, 6 hits, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. So he has been pitching pretty well. Our scouting accuracy on him is only high. Probably makes sense to request a scouting report while we're thinking about it. He's got at this point 8 days left on his rehab assignment, so we're going to have to make a decision on him relatively soon. You look at our pitching staff right now, everyone has an ERA below 3 among our starters. Admittedly, a very small sample size. And Brian Mata has been the least impressive of Mata, Doval, and Ryan, the 3 Rule 5 acquisitions that we have, who are probably more likely than not the players that we would be moving back down. I guess the only argument with the lefty is to perhaps send Kyle Backus or Sean Sullivan down. Sullivan still has 2 option years left, but at this point, he's pretty much an established major leaguer. Backus is a guy that we picked up in that trade with Arizona. He's getting his first substantive major league experience with us, and he's done fine. I do really like him because he is so dominant against left-handed pitching. Looks like your traditional loogie from back in the day before people had to face 3 batters. So I guess there would be an argument to try to get rid of either Backus or Sullivan if we're going to bring a lefty on board. But quite honestly, with the fact that we got 5 righties in the starting rotation, if we end up setting ourselves up in a bullpen where it's 4 lefties and 4 righties when we make that next move, probably not the worst thing in the world. And some more good news, another one of our top lefty relievers, Adrian Morejon, ready to begin a rehab assignment as well. So we're going to send him to AAA also. He's been out since the end of March, so he missed the bulk of... Actually, he didn't miss the bulk of spring training. He got hurt right near the end of spring training, but he's been out for a little over a month now. So probably can use close to a week in AAA, hopefully pitches 2 or 3 games, and then if we don't have any injuries to our pitching staff, we're going to have some interesting decisions to make to find spots on the Major League roster for Melenge and Morejon. And we've reached our decision point on Harold Melenge. In a perfect world, I'd probably keep him in AAA because he has gotten hit pretty hard his last couple of performances. Unfortunately, he is a former Rule 5 pick, and at this point, because he was on the IL for such a big chunk of last season, he still has 41 days that he's going to have to be on the active roster to kind of make him ours. So I think it's time to make a move to the pitching staff. I think Brian Mata's spot is definitely in jeopardy. I don't love the lack of control that River Ryan has. Clearly, our bench coach thinks he's a better pitcher, driven by the fact that he's a setup guy as opposed to a long reliever. Camilo Doval has really pitched well for us. I could send Sullivan down to the minors. I don't think I'm going to send Backus down since he has been so dominant as a left-hander. And when we look at his pitching stats, obviously he hasn't allowed a run against anybody, but left-handers are hitting a .182 against him. Right-handers hitting a .154 against him. So he's been pretty dominant against everybody. I guess you could argue he's been better against righties than he has been against lefties, but I don't think that pattern will necessarily continue. And I do think Mata's the right guy to send back. You look at his stuff, and among all of our relievers, he's got the worst stuff of any of our relievers. His control is a bit below average, does have good movement on his pitches. This is his third kind of stint in the majors. Hasn't been incredibly successful at any of them. I guess you could argue last year when he was a starter for Texas, he did put up a WAR of close to 1, but a 7-12 record and a 5.18 ERA with 16 homers, 168 hits, and 64 walks allowed in 146 innings pitched doesn't fill me with a ton of confidence. Thought he could be more effective for us as a reliever, and he really hasn't been in terms of his ERA, but it's obviously an extremely small sample size. His BABIP is lower, his WHIP is lower. But I think he's the right guy to move on from, so we are going to go ahead and release Bryan Mata back to Texas, and that will allow us to put Melenge back on the major league team. Morejon has pitched one game, allowed a couple of hits, including a homer, and walked a batter. So he may need another game or two to shake off the rust before we have to make another decision as far as our pitching staff. You can see with the swap there, we still have 3 Rule 5 eligible players at this point on the 26-man roster, and they are all relief pitchers. So the first month of the season is in the books. Although we lost 2 in a row to Montreal to finish off the month, we still have a 3-game lead on the Expos, the Nationals, and the Mets in the division. And we are up half a game on the Cubs and the Royals for the best record in baseball. Seifu and Honeycutt, similar to last year, are 1-2 in the league in steals. Last year they were 1-2 on our team. Seifu leading the league in batter WAR. We'll take a look at his numbers a month into the season. 346 average, 22 out of 23 stealing, 22 runs scored. Already has 6 doubles and a couple of triples. Only 3 runs driven in. I mean, he is our leadoff hitter. Only 5 walks, but with a 825 OPS, 129 and 131 OPS plus and WRC pluses, and a 2 WAR through the first month of the season. Hard to complain about anything that he's done. Would expect that BABIP of close to 400 will probably regress a bit in the coming weeks and months. Adley Rutschman tied with Elly De La Cruz for second in the league in batter WAR. He's hitting 328, 5 homers, 16 ribbies through his first month as our starting catcher. OPS over 1,100, and his OPS plus and his WRC plus are both in the 200 area. So just a monster start to the season so far for Rutschman. The 17 walks definitely help. His eye is well above average, and walks was one area where our offense was a bit weak last year, and having Rutschman will probably help in that. Taking a look at the pitchers, I don't really have anyone on the leaderboard anymore except for our ace Ohtani leading the National League in pitcher WAR. He is 3-2 with a 2.15 ERA, 47 strikeouts over 37 2/3 innings pitched. So our big players are performing really well so far. Take a quick look at the team stats and where we stand. We are first in starter ERA, fourth in bullpen ERA, first in runs allowed. You can see we are in the top 6 of every pitching category in the National League, leading the National League in about half of the pitching categories, and also getting some pretty good defensive efficiency and zone rating. Offensively, definitely more middle of the pack, sixth in the league in runs scored, middle of the pack in kind of most categories. You can see we are doing better in walks this year, thanks in a large part to Rutschman. We're 14th in that. Still strike out, or fourth in walks. Still strike out way too much. We're 14th in the league in strikeouts. Not surprisingly, we are first in the league in steals, thanks to primarily Deshaun Seifu. Our 19-9 record is actually a game below Pythagorean expectations, and kind of an interesting number here. Last year we had an 800 winning percentage against left-handed starting pitching in the regular season. This year we're off to a pretty rough start, 1-5 in our first 6 games against left-handed starters. So small sample size, but a little interesting that we pivoted from crushing left-handed pitching to struggling when we're playing against left-handed pitching thus far this season. And we've made it to mid-May, still winning about 2/3 of our games, or exactly 2/3 of our games at this point, with a 26-13 record, still first place in the NL East, up 2.5 on the Nationals and the Mets. So everyone's been playing pretty well among the top teams in the division over our last 10 games. Seifu with 27 steals, still leading the league. Not surprisingly, his batting average has dipped to 314. I'm assuming his BABIP is coming down. Yep, it's already dropped to 371. Not surprising. Obviously would hope that he continued to put up crazy numbers, but you know that when you've got a BABIP of about 400, unless you're Tony Gwynn, you're probably going to have a number like that come down a bit. But time to bring Morejon up. Not really any issues with the pitching staff at this point. Ji-Hoo Kim, our number 5 starter, 2-2 with a 4.18 ERA. Certainly fine if we've got a guy that goes out every 5th day, and he's the only one on our pitching staff with an ERA above the mid-3s. I think I am going to send Sean Sullivan down. He's just in the unfortunate position of being one of the guys who has options. I think I want to keep the bullpen 4 lefties and 4 righties for the time being. Sullivan may get an opportunity to start some games in Albany. I think he's definitely more productive as a reliever than he has been as a starter at the major league level, but at least if he's starting down there, he'll get a few more innings to pitch. Although, at this point, according to our scouts, there's really not much else that we're going to see in terms of development with him. But he will be the guy caught up in the numbers game. We're going to demote Sullivan to AAA, and that will allow us to make a spot for Morejon, who has pitched obviously better since that brutal first game down there, 4 saves in Albany, and Morejon back at the major league level. And now it's just a matter of Raylan Perez getting healthy, and he's still a couple of months away. But otherwise, we've had pretty good luck with the injuries thus far this season. Hopefully that will continue. And as we head towards the last week and a half in May, the Wings still winning close to 2/3 of our games at 29-15. But the first big injury of the regular season, Hayden Yinger, elbow inflammation, going to be out for about 3 months. So the good news, I guess, is that if he stays on that schedule, we will have him back for the playoffs. But who knows whether he will stay on that schedule or not. He's been fantastic for us. 5-1 record with a 1.74 ERA over 46 2/3 innings pitched, WHIP below 1, and a very low BABIP of 224 have worked in his favor. Definitely going to be a loss to be without Yinger for the next 3 months and the big part of the season. That will allow us to bring Sean Sullivan back up. We definitely need him now, and I think we may actually put Sullivan right into the rotation as our number 5 starter, see what he's able to do for us over at least a few starts before potentially going with Melenge or River Ryan instead as a 5th starter. But Morejon, small sample size, but obviously has given up a few hits and runs since he came up, and you could say the same thing about Melenge, but very small sample size of 5 1/3 and 3 2/3 innings for both of them, so not going to get too stressed out about it at this point. And Adley Rutschman now out with a day-to-day injury, going to be 2 to 3 weeks with a strained ab. Does have a minimal impact on his hitting, his throwing, and his running. Given that we're at 29 and 16, even though we've lost a couple in a row, still got a 3.5 game lead on both the Nationals and the Mets. I'm going to be extra conservative and put Rutschman on to the IL. Hopefully that'll help him heal a little quicker. Hitting 287 with 8 home runs, 24 ribbies. OPS close to 1,000 still, 172 OPS plus, 161 WRC plus, and a 2.3 WAR. So he's definitely been giving us everything we signed up for when we brought him on board. The 27 walks in 34 games is a huge asset. So we'll definitely take a hit losing him for the next few weeks, but we are playing the long game on this season, not the short game, and the goal is to have the likes of Rutschman, Yinger, and Perez all healthy for late September and October, and hopefully into early November. And we've got some familiar names in our organization. We'll be bringing Joey Bart up. We actually signed him right after the season got underway. He was still a free agent, so we sent him to AAA. One of 3 pretty solid defensive veteran catchers we have down there, along with Carson Kelly and Nick Fortes. So Bart will get the call to probably platoon in a way with Jake Rogers. I don't think either of them really deserves to be the everyday catcher, so we'll try to ensure that maybe there's a 60-40 split among the two of them in terms of playing time over the next few weeks while we wait for Clutchman to return. And the injury situation is getting even further out of control. Starting right fielder Jace Barofin has a strained PCL, out for 2 to 3 weeks. Having a bit of a bounce back year after a disappointing season last year, hitting 289 with 10 doubles and 5 homers and 152 at-bats. 113 OPS plus, 114 WRC plus as our starting right fielder. We've got depth in the outfield. So, again, not the end of the world. The point is to have these guys healthy at the end of the season rather than the beginning of the season. But the injuries are definitely beginning to add up. I can't claim otherwise. And to replace Barofin, we're going to bring up Lang Choi. You may remember him. He's a minor league free agent signing that we made before last season. Ended up spending all of last year in the minors for us. Started him out in high A ball. He moved up to Double A and then Triple A at the end of the year. Was pretty productive at all 3 levels. This year he's hitting 277 with 3 home runs and 13 ribbies in 20 games at Albany. Like his speed, he's versatile enough defensively to play any position in the outfield. And looks like, with the exception of the fact that he's not going to walk all that much, that he could have a somewhat average-ish major league bat. So it will be interesting to see what the 22-year-old can do at the major league level. And we've made it to the end of May, beginning of June. Shane Bieber, sore back, but it's only going to impact him for one day, and he just pitched a couple days ago, so not a big issue there. Jace Barofin going to require an extra week or two to get ready and back in action, so that's not optimal. The team has not been playing as well recently. Obviously, we were very conservative with Rutschman, putting him in the IL. He's still got 5 days left with that injury, that strained ab. Just didn't want it to turn into anything more serious. But particularly with Yinger, Rutschman, and Barofin kind of all going on the IL over the last half of the month of May, the team has definitely been struggling. If we take a look at the standings, you know, we've been basically winning as many as we've lost since those guys started getting hurt. Lost 2, won 3, lost 2, won 3, lost 2, won 2, lost 2. And when we take a look at our team stats here as of the month of June, still had a winning record, but 15-12, not nearly as strong as we were in the month of May. 34-21 record overall, right on target with our Pythagorean expectations. Very weird. 800 winning percentage against lefties last year, 200 winning percentage against lefties this year. The offense gotten a little better. We're up to 5th in the National League in runs scored. Still strike out more than any team except one in the National League. And the pitching staff still very good. The bullpen is average with a 3.69 ERA. But the starters still have the best ERA among starters in the NL and still below a 3 ERA from our starting rotation. So season is going well, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks we will be ultimately getting Rutschman and Barofin back, and we'll be waiting a while longer for the likes of Perez and especially Yinger to rejoin our rotation. And good news, Rutschman is back and healthy. The team's been playing a little better the first few days here in the month of June. We did split time a bit, starting Rogers against right-handed pitching and Bart against left-handed pitching. Rogers for the year at this point hitting just a $169 with 3 homers in 77 at-bats. Those of you who said that for a aging backup catcher, even though we didn't give up a lot of talent, we still probably gave up too much just in terms of players for him. Probably a fair assessment still. I do like his defensive skills, but obviously not hitting much. Joey Bart in limited time, 1 for 13, hitting .077. So I think we probably move Bart down to AAA. I don't know if he's going to even be willing to go there. He's got to clear waivers. That's fine. We will move on from him if someone grabs him. Obviously want to get Rutschman back on the team. While we're looking at our catchers, we'll take a look at the guy who's listed as a catcher but is really our full-time DH, Samuel Basallo. See what he's doing as he tries to follow up his Rookie of the Year award and his Silver Slugger last year. And he's still been solid this year, hitting .268, 13 homers in 228 at-bats, also his 18 doubles, has driven in 50 runs in 60 games. His OPS plus and his WRC plus are both a little higher than they were a year ago. So he is still doing the job for us as our everyday designated hitter. And we're getting near the middle of June. It's been a really good month for the Wings so far with an 8-3 record during the month. Stop and play now because some more good news. Jace Barofin looks like he is ready to rejoin the team. Check in and see what Lang Choi has done since he came up. He's hit .240 with a dinger and 25 at-bats, so he's been respectable at the major league level, but certainly we'll send him back down to AAA for a little bit more seasoning at this point to get Barofin right back into the starting lineup. And we're closing in on the midpoint of the season, and we made it to the first-year player draft. Still playing really well. 46-27 record is the best in baseball by a game over Seattle. Unfortunately, we're only up a game and a half on the Mets, who have won 6 in a row. So looks like it's going to be another real good battle for the Wings for the NL East again this season. Looking at the league leaders, Deshaun Seifu with his 51 stolen bases looks on pace for another triple-digit stolen base total this year, and most likely the stolen base title for the National League. ERA, Shohei Ohtani, 5-4 record, but second in the NL with a 2.45 ERA, and tied for second in the NL with a 3.2 WAR among pitchers. So a couple of our big-time players continue to be on the leaderboard here, closing in on the midway point of this 2029 baseball season. As I mentioned in previous episodes, coming off of the best record in baseball last year and with some supplemental picks involved, our Buffalo Wings aren't going to be picking until pick number 35 in the upcoming draft. So unlikely that we're going to get a real impact player there. The one thing I will say is it does seem like there is an inordinate number of 5-star potential players available this year. Of course, this happens now that we're not picking in the top 5, where we have picked 3 consecutive seasons. One guy that I mentioned in a previous episode who I think is a pretty intriguing prospect is the center fielder Tim Gaglia. Really like the potential range out there, pretty good speed, and a potentially pretty good bat, except he's just not going to walk a lot. And that has been in the past an issue with our team, having a lot of guys who don't walk a lot. A little better with Rutschman on board this year, but still an area that we could do better at. Also, a fair amount of 5-star potential pitchers available as well. So I think it's unlikely, even though there are, looks like 6 5-star pitchers and 17 5-star potential batters. So there's 23 players in the draft that our scout thinks are 5-star potential. So it's certainly conceivable that 1 or 2 of them might fall to us when we get to the draft. No guarantees, but hopefully we can find someone who will be useful. I tend to think there will be more than one that will fall to us just because of the amount of money some of these guys are looking for. You know, the $13.5 million that Alex Fellers is looking for. If he doesn't go in the first few picks of the draft, that could definitely turn some teams off on him. Shamar Badio is a guy who was in the draft last year, decided to go back to college for another year when he wasn't signed. Has hit .359 with 22 homers and 70 ribbies, so the best season of his collegiate career at this point. He'll be back in the draft this year. Dylan Masonave is a guy who was in the draft a few years ago coming out of high school, didn't end up getting signed, and went to Purdue University Northwest, where he's going to be back in the draft this year as a college player. So we're going to have some interesting decisions to make. Also mentioned that I did try to focus this offseason on hopefully making our minor leagues more competitive. Can't really see it too much in the records right now. We've got winning records in Albany and Utica. We are borderline respectable in Jamestown and Marathon. And sadly, the 400 and 300 winning percentages that we have with our rookie league teams are better than they were overall a year ago. But would certainly hope that the rookie level teams can do better than they have been in the very admittedly small sample size to start their season. As the season moves on, looking at player development, they consider us the 12th best farm system in baseball. Zap, our number one pick from a year ago, hitting 206 in 10 games to start this season. Ali Ostendorf and rookie ball 0-2 with a 15.34 ERA. The issue with him has just been his control and the fact that he's given up 7 home runs in 7 innings pitched this year. Very small sample size, but clearly that's not going to work. Honestly, at the age of 20, closing in on, he'll be 21 before the start of next season. I may just move him to A ball at some point just to get him into a change of scenery. Taking a look at our organization, I think he's got a pretty good relationship with our pitching coach in the FCL. Yeah, he's got a good relationship with Ostendorf, and he's outstanding at teaching pitching, outstanding in development, and good with mechanics. Taking a look at our manager at that level, Brady Stewart. He's got an excellent relationship with Ostendorf, so you would think that in terms of development, he's not in a bad place to potentially develop, but obviously it's not working out quite the way that we'd want at this point. Rodolfo Carmona having a much better season in the Dominican League this year than he did last year, hitting 360, admittedly a small sample size in his first 10 games, and Tyreek Hardage hitting 212 in his first 10 games on rookie ball this year. So we'll get to see what those guys are doing more over the coming weeks and months, but hopefully we'll continue to influence the development of those players positively. And before we finish up the episode, we'll check in on the stats. Ohtani, we already talked about. Bieber's 6-4 with a 3.61 ERA. Painter 5-3, 3.26. Fifth starter before we had the injuries. Ji-Hoo Kim 7-3, 3.39, and even Sean Sullivan is now 4-1, 3.86 at the major league level. So the starting pitching remains good. Andres Munoz has been great as a closer. The issue is we're just not getting him a ton of innings pitched, only 15 2/3 innings, but a 0.57 ERA and 23 strikeouts. Emerson Talavera's been solid, as has Adrian Morejon as stoppers. Javier Atencio has been okay, a bit of a down year for him. Kyle Backus, Camilo Doval, Harold Melenge, and River Ryan, all with pretty respectable statistics on the season so far. So the pitching, no complaints here on June 21st. As we've talked about, Perez getting closer to being back from that torn rotator cuff. Probably going to be late July, early August before we see him at the major league level, knowing that he will need some time to rehab. And Yinger, who could be an important starter for us come playoff time, still about 2 months away, but that should give him time, hopefully, to pitch 5 or 6 games at the major league level late August and September, and hopefully be ready to go if we're fortunate enough to make the playoffs this year. Moving on to our position players, and I think the offense has been reasonably productive this year. I think most of the platoons that we've been doing have been working out. We already touched on Seifu. He leads the team in WAR at 3.4, 51 for 55 stealing, hitting 295. OPS plus just barely above average, but he's got 47 runs scored, not surprisingly, the highest figure on the team. Vance Honeycutt, not hitting for quite as much power as he has in previous seasons, but batting 316, 16 doubles, 8 homers, and he is 18 of 19 stealing. So those two guys are our primary forces on the base path, and they continue to run pretty successfully. 2.7 WAR from Rutschman. Obviously, we were conservative and lost him for about 3 weeks when we put him on the IL. 284 average, 11 homers, 35 ribbies. He's walked 31 times, which is one of the biggest figures on the team. Tied for second on the team, actually, with Marcelo Meyer, who has bounced back from that injury pretty well, hitting 281 with 7 homers for us. He's struck out 64 times, but still has a 112 OPS plus on the season and a 1.8 WAR, which ties him with Takao Ota, and he is one of the guys who's definitely been a lot more productive in a pure platoon this year. Also his second year since coming over from Japan. Commenter recently kind of noted that it does seem with pitchers who come over from Japan, they kind of hit the ground running and are real effective their first year, and then sometimes lose a little bit of effectiveness to some degree the second year as the book on them becomes well known, whereas sometimes it seems like it takes the hitters a full season to really get their bearings and be able to handle major league pitching, and they do a lot better the second season. And Ota, that seems to be the case. 278 average with a team best 15 home runs. And he's also driven on 46 runs through the 66 games that he has played. Jace Barofin missed some time with an injury, but with a 282 average and 7 homers and 177 at-bats. Bit of a bounce back year for him. Nolan Jones as a third baseman against right-handed pitching hasn't been incredibly effective, hitting just 225 with 6 homers. So he's probably been one of the more disappointing guys as far as his platoon production. The issue is that the guy he's in the platoon with is Kevin Made, who's hitting just 204 with 3 homers for us. So no real impetus for us to switch that up now. Samuel Basallo, the batting average is dipped to 237, but he does have 13 homers and a team best 51 ribbies for last year's Rookie of the Year. His WAR is always going to be a little lower since he doesn't add anything in the field, and he still has never played in the field in his year and a half in the major leagues. Probably best if we keep it that way. Eric Pena, bit of a down year, at least in terms of the batting average compared to last year, 235, but he does have 12 dingers and 229 at-bats. Nick York, probably a guy that wouldn't hurt to get a little more playing time. The issue, of course, is that he's the right-handed hitting side of the platoon at first base with Takao Ota, and Ota's hitting fantastically, but with a 268 average, 5 doubles and 3 homers in 80 plate appearances, 71 at-bats, York remains a productive offensive player. We talked about Made, backup catcher Jake Rogers hitting just a $169 for us, and then Miguel Blaze hitting just 207, does have 11 doubles and 3 home runs and 135 at-bats, so a little bit of extra base power, but Blaze, with the fact that he's hitting just 207 on the year and he does not walk all that much, is a negative WAR player for us. He is, however, outside of Seifu and Honeycutt, the only player on our team with more than 1 stolen base, 6 for 7 on the year. So seems like an area that we could potentially upgrade with Blaze, and certainly third base with the Jones in Made platoon not being incredibly productive offensively is an area where maybe we can find some help. The issue, of course, is that we don't have a lot of money to bring on that help, so we're either going to have to take off some salary, acquire a player who a team is willing to keep most of their salary, if not all of it, to get something done. But that's something we'll spend a lot more time thinking about over the next 5.5, 6 weeks till we get to the trade deadline. Financially, things going reasonably well. Fan interest still at or above 100. We've been selling out pretty consistently recently and have had pretty good attendance all year. Revenue per game up 2.6% from a year ago. So financially, we're doing about as well as we could hope. And on the field, we're in first place, and we've got the best record in baseball. So the first close to half of this 2029 season is going pretty well for the Wings. The goal is to obviously continue playing well over the second half of the season and remain healthy and well as we hopefully prepare for a long run in the playoffs. And we will find out how our progress towards those goals continues in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching and hope you have a great day.